First of all, that was an honor like few have ever seen before. And I think I was particularly impressed by those children. They were happy. They were beautiful. The military is obvious. It couldn't be better, but those children were amazing, and they represent so much. And I know they represent so much to you. You and I have known each other now for a long time. In fact, the longest relationship of our two countries that any president and president has had. And that's, to me, an honor. We've had a fantastic relationship. We've gotten along. When there were difficulties, we worked it out. I would call you, and you would call me. And whenever we had a problem, people don't know, whenever we had a problem, we worked that out very quickly. We're going to have a fantastic future together. Such respect for China, the job you've done. You're a great leader. I say it to everybody. You're a great leader. Sometimes people don't like me saying it, but I say it anyway because it's true. I only say the truth. And I just want to say on behalf of all of the great delegation that we have the greatest businessmen, the biggest, and I guess the best in the world. We have amazing people, and they're all with me. Every single one of them, we asked the top 30 in the world, every single one of them said yes. And I didn't want the second or the third in the company. I wanted only the top. And they're here today to pay respects to you and to China. And they look forward to trade and doing business, and it's going to be totally reciprocal on our behalf. So I really look very much forward to our discussion. It's a big discussion. There are those that say this is maybe the biggest summit ever. They can never remember anything like it. I can say in the United States, people aren't talking about anything else. But it's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to be your friend. And the relationship between China and the USA is going to be better than ever before. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And this was President Donald Trump's address in the Great Hall of the People, where he, of course, upholded and he commended the equation that he has with China and the grand ceremonial welcome that he received with jubilant children waving Chinese and Washington's flags. And, of course, a great emphasis was placed on the future of this partnership. And now to discuss more about the implications of this meeting, we have with us Bishop Garrison. He's a former senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense and current senior fellow and adjunct professor, National Security Institute at George Mason University Law School. Now, Mr. Garrison, thank you so much for making time with us. What we understand that this summit is unlike the last one where, the geopolitical context and the context in general was very different. But this time around, it is heavy with, a lot of tensions, be it the West Asia conflict, be it Taiwan, or even the AI technology race. Now, how do you, assess this change and this contrast that we're seeing pan out?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me here. Good morning. Yeah, there's definitely going to be a different tone and tenor to this overall conversation. Now we're talking about the potential of trades. When we're talking about tariffs, the president is using that lever yet again, looking at the current 10% tariffs we have right now with China. But at the same time, we're looking at the exports. We're looking at curbing some of the raw material restrictions or raw critical material restrictions, that China has placed on a lot of its resources. And then we're just looking for additional opportunities potentially for China to support the United States in its handling of overall of the Iranian war right now. China could have a great deal of influence here, and it remains to be seen exactly how it may step in and what actions it may take.
Mm-hmm. Of course, Mr. Garrison, and also there has been a lot of emphasis, right, Ripa, on the delegation that has accompanied President Donald Trump, and a lot of questions around where the United States' priorities lie and what is it indicating towards.
Yes, Diksha. Trump is actually traveling with a very high-profile leadership panel, and alongside, he's also traveling with Elon Musk, Jensen Huang, Tim Cook, and other corporate heavyweights, while publicly urging Xi to open up China to American industry. So how influential are corporate interests in this summit?
Well, again, that's going to be an interesting question that everyone's going to be looking for an answer to, simply because, look, at the end of the day, China is going to do what's in its own best interest, and it looks for opportunities to continue to dominate a lot of these industries. As you mentioned at the outset here, AI is something that China is continuously looking to leverage. They've really leaned in on robotics. They've leaned in on building their own algorithms, their own LLMs. They're leaning in now on building their own infrastructure in order to build out their own chipsets, their own AI chips that they're looking to do more with less, because over the years, and particularly previously from the Biden administration, there were a lot of curbs, a lot of sanctions involving, well, exactly how much we were willing to provide to China when it came to these AI chips, chipsets that companies like NVIDIA were making that were just absolutely top of the line in supporting the compute necessary to really power this AI revolution. And China has been doing all it can, again, with critical minerals and with its own infrastructure to build out its own supply chains and to continue to dominate this. So having these interactions with leading frontier AI companies, with leading space companies, when you talk about Elon Musk, we have to remember that he wears the hat for SpaceX as well, is going to be pivotal for China, but it also falls very well into their overall priorities and goals moving not only through the remainder of this decade, but for decades to come as they're building out their own power.
Right, those are some very interesting points there, Mr. Garrison, but I'm also interested to know how you're reading into the latest comments that we're, hearing from Xi and Donald Trump, where Xi has, and his delegation, they have called for the two countries to be partners and not rivals, and this is a sentiment which we also heard being echoed by President Donald Trump. But at the same time, it's also important to note the contrast, because we understand that the Iran war is probably going to feature quite prominently, in these talks. And before leaving Washington, Donald Trump said that he might not be needing Xi's help to, stabilize ties, but we understand that Chinese cooperation in restoring stability is, it has become an important, if unstated, goal of the summit. How do you think that is going to pan out?
Well, look, I would make an argument that both countries need to find a more stable long-term paradigm when it comes to U.S.-China relations. The United States, particularly our farmers, our Midwest that have long relied on the sale of soybeans in order to help stabilize their finances. We've been curbing that with China. At the same time, they've been looking for opportunities to take back or at least have some greater controls on raw critical mineral sales. So there are already touch points like that exist. We could go deeper and talk about protection of U.S. Intellectual property from theft, or ensuring that certain technologies are not utilized or exploited, I should say, by China within their own operations, as you look towards some concerns about privacy and their ability for nefarious actors and others to get into some of our systems. So there are a lot of balances to be struck here, and that's part one to this. Part two, you go in looking into Iran, and you really see that there needs to be some level of de-escalation. The president has said repeatedly he does not want to see a nuclear Iran. I don't think anyone really sees that besides Iran as a viable path forward. But it really is going to be a lot of reliance on our allies as well as potentially partners with China. And I know what is said in front of the cameras and what is said at these meetings, but there's going to be a lot of diplomacy that is going to happen and needs to happen behind the scenes in order for us to find that level of stability and long-standing ties. And it's going to be interesting to see how a lot of this plays out.
Mm-hmm.